Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting on August 18th, 2020. This is a pre-recorded presentation related to survey results about growth and development and residential open space in Williston, Vermont.
Let's review the bylaw amendment process. After an amendment is proposed, the Planning Commission collects information and input before deciding next steps. Tonight, we're at the collect info phase.
The main goal of tonight's meeting is for the Planning Commission to listen, learn from the public input they hear, and ask questions of one another to help them make their decision about this process. There will be no decision made tonight related to this bylaw amendment. If the Planning Commission does decide in the future to move a bylaw amendment on, it would be reviewed and eventually either adopted or rejected by the Select Board. The Select Board is the body that approves changes to the rules in town, and then those changed rules would be administered by the Development Review Board. Again, we are here with the Planning Commission tonight. The town plan sets the overall direction for future growth and development in Williston and informs the rules or Unified Development Bylaw, which is applied by the Development Review Board when new projects are proposed. Tonight, we're talking about a potential change to the rules in Chapter 39, the Residential Zoning District, and how it handles open space. Let's spend a few minutes getting familiar with Williston from the perspective of zoning and land use planning. In the industrial parts of Williston, we don't allow new residential uses, and generally the open space requirements of the town do not apply. Williston's Growth Center, an area about 1.5 miles by 1.5 miles around the Taft Corners intersection, is where the majority of the town's new residential, commercial, and mixed-use growth is anticipated. Although open spaces are required in this district, it's typically small urban pocket parks and other pedestrian-oriented facilities as opposed to large natural areas. To balance growth and rural character in Williston, the bulk of new development is proposed to happen in the Taft Corners Growth Center, which is envisioned as developing into a design-conscious, pedestrian-friendly commercial center. In addition, the Growth Center, shown in red on this map, is flanked to the east and to the north by permanently protected open space, creating a buffer between this more intense development and the more suburban residential development beyond its boundaries. In contrast to the Growth Center, Williston has a large area outside of its sewer service area where low-density residential uses are the only uses allowed, and where subdivisions are generally required to set aside 75% of their land area as permanently protected open space. The remaining area in town is the sewer service area outside of the Growth Center. This is where Williston anticipates residential subdivisions that are similar but not identical to existing neighborhoods on a handful of large acre parcels that remain in this area. Most of the new development in this area would be anticipated within the residential zoning district, which is the subject of our conversation this evening. The orange area on this map outlined in black is the residential zoning district. It represents 12% of the land area of town and is an area of town where only residential uses and childcare are allowed. No other commercial uses are allowed in this district. There is some open space required in this district, but it is not a percentage amount. And the discussion tonight is about considering the idea of requiring a percentage amount of open space of new subdivisions in this district.
This map shows all the parcels in the residential zoning district color-coded by size. To help orient, here's Route 2A, here's Interstate 89, North Williston Road, Mountain View Road. The white stripe is the Cirque Highway right-of-way. The parcels shown in light yellow are too small to subdivide, less than 2/3 of an acre, but they create about 3/4 of all the parcels in the zoning district. The parcels shown in maroon are greater than 10.5 acres. They create a lot of the land area in the residential zoning district, but are only 3% of the number of parcels in the district. The land shown in green on this map is not subdividable due to size or existing protections, such as conservation easements, designated open space, or HOA common land. Subtracting the land shown in green that's not eligible for subdivision, and you're left with a handful of parcels that could be impacted by a change to the open space bylaw requirements.
When we talk about requiring open space in Williston, what we mean is an area of land that's designated as being permanently protected from future development. And usually, open space contains important natural resources that are desirable to protect. The town plan identifies the protection of open space as an important goal and discusses several methods by which open space may be protected, including through regulation, but also by purchase and funding of conservation easements within the town. The current regulations in the residential zoning district identify open space protection as a goal, but do not specify a quantitative minimum amount of open space that any one subdivision must preserve. Where there is no quantitative minimum requirement for open space in the RZD, the town could add a number of different tools to enhance protection of open space in this district. A percentage open space requirement could be added to the bylaw, as is under consideration tonight. The town could add language requiring the quality of open space to be more carefully examined, or the shape or configuration or contiguity of potential open space with other protected parcels could be given more weight, or the town may pursue other tools to enhance the protection of open space in this zoning district. Let's look at how open space works in a subdivision. Here we have a parcel of land, and here we have a conventional subdivision without an open space set aside. Building lots are dispersed evenly across the parcel. Here we have the same parcel of land in an open space subdivision configuration. Now there is a large open space parcel, and building lots, including a diversity of lot sizes and housing types, are concentrated on one portion of the parcel. Let's make this an example 12-acre parcel. Again, here's our conventional subdivision with 12 dwelling units. The density of the subdivision is 1 dwelling unit per acre. In our open space subdivision, we split the lot in half, and we now have 6 acres of open space, and the development is on the other 6 acres. The overall density of the project remains 1 dwelling unit per acre. But if we were to just look at the developed portion of the parcel and maybe not understand that the open space came along with it, we would perceive it as denser. It looks like 2 units per acre.
Many subdivisions in Williston are open space subdivisions. Much of the green on this map was achieved through some sort of open space subdivision, where development is concentrated to a small area of the parcel and remaining land becomes permanently protected open space. Sometimes open space is achieved through an offset. For example, Mud Pond was an offset for Taft Corners Park.
Williston has a track record of requiring open space to be provided as part of a subdivision in the RZD, even without requiring a certain percentage. Here are some examples. Brennan Woods, 53% open space. Southridge, 44% open space. Old Stage Estates, 62% open space. Coyote Run, 35% open space. Adding a minimum percentage open space requirement to the RZD would change some things about the way development takes place. It would likely change the design of new subdivisions, and that open space would provide places to walk and for wildlife habitat to protect water quality, preserve views, and preserve agricultural soils. Those are the things that open space does. But by itself, a minimum percentage open space requirement would not change the number of allowed dwelling units, and that means other things that come from the allowed dwelling units, such as the density, the unit size, style, or architectural design of the houses, traffic generation, would not be changed by the addition of a minimum open space requirement to the bylaw. So now let's talk about the survey results. We're going to summarize quite a bit here, so we want to remind everybody that all of the response data and a complete digest of all the written comments that were made in response to the survey are available on the town's website, and we will provide a link at the end of this presentation to that site. We conducted our survey during the months of July and August and mailed survey announcements to affected properties and the abutters to those properties in the residential zoning district. We publicized the survey in Planners Corner and on Front Porch Forum, the town webpage, and the Williston Parents Facebook group. Overall, we received 221 responses to our survey.
The demographics of our survey respondents is similar to that of the overall town of Williston. We received 2 responses from people under the age of 18 and 2 over the age of 85, with a median in the 45 to 54 age category. We received responses from people who have lived in Williston for less than 1 year to 77 years, with the median residency of 11 years. The overwhelming majority of respondents own their own home, only 2% renting. We asked about commuting patterns before COVID. About 1/3 of respondents commute outside of Williston, and 1/4 do not work, including people who are retired.
Most of our respondents either agreed or strongly agreed that they understood about the 4 main areas of Williston, the residential zoning district, and the way open space is currently working in Williston. We showed survey respondents the goals the town plan expresses for open space in Williston and asked them to pick their top 3. Open space for wildlife habitat and watershed health were most frequently ranked by people in their top 3 goals for open space, with passive recreation a close second.
Open space is one of many goals that Williston is trying to achieve in the residential zoning district. So we asked our survey respondents to choose a top 3 and provide us with more information about what values they were interested in seeing achieved in the residential zoning district. Open space was most frequently ranked in the top 3 by survey respondents, followed by number of dwelling units, street and path connectivity, and affordability. Architectural design nearly tied for 3rd place with open space. It's important to note that beyond building height and setbacks, there are no architectural design standards in the residential zoning district. And we did hear a lot of feedback in the long answer questions about architectural design or lack thereof in Williston.
We also asked our survey respondents to tell us of all of the potential impacts of growth and development on the town, which were the ones they were most concerned about. Survey respondents ranked vehicle congestion highest, followed immediately by environmental impacts, then schools, noise, impacts to emergency services, vehicle speeds and safety, road and sidewalk maintenance, water and sewer, other, and lastly, the temporary impacts of construction from new development.
What do you like about your neighborhood? This was one of several open-ended questions that we asked in the survey. Tonight we'll be brief and skip over them, but we encourage you to go to the website and download the complete digest, where you can read all the questions and all the responses submitted by survey participants. The second half of the survey was the development preference exercise. Here, survey respondents were asked to think about the future of residential development throughout the town. Survey participants were asked 3 questions about new residential development: the rate of growth, the location in town, and the pattern of development.
We have a few caveats about the results of this part of our survey. Keep in mind we have a relatively small sample size of 221 responses, and the staff received a number of comments that the question format was confusing. So when you look at the following slides, think about how your answers stack up to existing town policy, which will identify against the results. The first question we asked was to identify a desirable development rate for Williston, expressed as the number of dwelling units per year that would be built in the town.
Here are the survey responses. The median response was 45 units per year as a preferred development rate. Existing town policy allows 80 units per year maximum. Actual build-out is slightly less at 76 units per year from 2009 to 2019. Compare this to 120 units per year when the town experienced a strain on services in the early 1990s. At that time, there was no Allenbrook School, no local option sales tax to fund municipal services, no emergency medical staff, and relatively small police and fire departments. The second question was about development location. We asked survey respondents to distribute 100 units across the 3 major areas of town where residential development is allowed. The bar graph on the left is an average of all survey responses. On average, placing 47% of all future new units in the growth center, 27% in the sewer service area outside the growth center, and the remaining 26% outside the sewer service area shown in green on the map. The table on the left compares existing town policy to the survey responses. On average, town policy places more units in the growth center than the survey respondents, about the same in the sewer service area outside the growth center, and then fewer units than the survey respondents in the area shown in green outside the sewer service area.
We then asked our survey respondents about development pattern, again using 100 units and asking respondents to distribute those 100 units across the various development patterns from extremely dense to no development at all, as shown in this chart. Of the 100 units, respondents on average spread 66, or 2/3 of the units, fairly evenly across development patterns ranging from urban density to rural large lot subdivision. Williston's prevailing development pattern in the past was largely rural and suburban. Today, most new development in Williston is a little more dense and a little more urban. With Williston's current policy goals related to focusing growth in the growth center, most new units in Williston will be in an even more urban pattern, but will be limited geographically to the growth center. And there will be less rural development as open space requirements and land preservation efforts continue as directed by the town plan.
The survey respondents on average distributed 2/3 of the units fairly evenly on zones T6 to T2. 1/3 of the units were identified as conserve or no build, where units would be taken off the table for development. So if the survey respondent preference is to conserve or not build 1/3 of all future units, what does the town do to conserve that land? There are two primary tools: the transfer of development rights and the purchase of development rights.
The town plan identifies the purchase of easements, the transfer of development rights, and the maintenance of a working landscape as strategies it will continue to use to protect open space. To protect open space through the transfer of development rights, potential development in the rural part of town is removed from those lands which are conserved and concentrated into a receiving zone, in this case the town's growth center, where it is developed in a more urban pattern, leaving the protected land in the ag-rural district undeveloped. With the purchase of development rights, the town or another conservation entity pays the owners of rural lands to not build houses on their land and owns easements over that land. These potential future units are not built, but are locked up when those easements are achieved. Williston uses its Environmental Reserve Fund to purchase development rights. Since 1989, this has helped conserve over 2,200 acres in town, and the town's $2.2 million investment has resulted in $5.2 million worth of land conservation over the life of the fund. This is the fund that was most recently used by the town to purchase the Catamount Community Forest. In terms of putting money in the fund, the Select Board typically puts $60,000 to $70,000 each year in the fund. However, in this fiscal year and the upcoming one, it's likely that no money will be placed in the fund due to uncertainty related to COVID-19.
Let's take a look at a theoretical example. Here are the parcels that are eligible for subdivision in the residential zoning district. The parcels shown in maroon are greater than 10.5 acres. When constrained land, like steep slopes and wetland buffers, are calculated out, we're left with 330 acres of developable land. The survey preference was to conserve land and not build 1/3 of future residential units throughout the town. What would it take to not build 1/3 of the units just on parcels greater than 10.5 acres in the residential zoning district? we have 330 acres of unconstrained land, an approximate land value of $25,000 per acre. We base this number off a recent property transaction in the residential zoning district. Do the math, and we get an estimated value of $2.75 million. Comparing the annual ERF contribution of $60,000 to the hypothetical dollar value of $2.75 million to take 1/3 of the acreage out of the RZD from development. With the ERF alone, that would take 40 years to purchase that land. Keep in mind that the ERF fund is typically used to leverage state and federal funding for land conservation. So the $2.75 million that our theoretical example calculates is only for the parcels shown in maroon in the residential zoning district and doesn't take into consideration land conservation goals that Williston has outside of the residential zoning district in the rural part of town. Remember that the Planning Commission is collecting information and input as they consider an amendment to the RZD open space requirements. There are several options available to enhance the existing goals for open space. While survey respondents most often ranked open space as a top 3 priority, other categories like number of dwelling units, street path connectivity, and affordability were also ranked as important. Recall that a minimum percentage open space requirement would likely change the design of new subdivisions and enhance existing goals for open space in the residential zoning district. But it will not do things like changing the allowed number of dwelling units, the allowable density, or other things like architectural design or the amount of traffic generated by a new development. Vehicle congestion and environmental impacts were most frequently ranked as important by survey respondents when thinking about the impacts of growth in Williston throughout the town. Schools, noise, and emergency services were also ranked. In the live Planning Commission meeting, we will form small groups using Zoom breakout rooms. When we return to the large group, Planning Commission members will report back with what they heard in their small group. What is the problem we're trying to solve? This is the first question we would like you to consider in your breakout room. And secondly, is an amendment to the RZD open space requirements the best solution? When prompted on your screen, click Join Breakout Room. Telephone participants are automatically joined. The Zoom window on your computer will reset when you switch into and out of the breakout rooms. When we return to the large group, the Planning Commission members will report back to everybody about what they heard in their small group.